Hey everybody, thanks for coming to watch the show. Today I've got some more Lord of the Rings trivia for you from the Fellowship of the Ring novel. Everybody seemed to really enjoy my last video. It did very well as far as views. I appreciate everybody that watched it. And I had a lot of fun going through the book and finding all these interesting facts and sharing them with you guys. But I did actually go back through the book a little bit and double check some things because in my last video I got a little bit of feedback from some people that said some of the things I included were a little bit incorrect or they actually were in the movie. So I apologize if anything was off base as far as that goes in the last video, but I've tried to make sure that everything is correct in this one. And I'd just like to say that I'm by no means a Lord of the Rings expert. I'm just a fan like you guys that's trying to share some cool things from the book that people may not have seen, because I know a lot of people haven't read the books even if they do like the movies. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And also, this is any facts that I say aren't in the movies. That just refers to the theatrical release of the movies, not the extended editions, because I've actually not seen those. I'd really like to watch them, but I've not been able to find a good deal on them for like a Blu-ray copy of those, because I do want to have all the Lord of the Rings and Hobbits on Blu-ray, but in the extended edition. So I haven't been able to find a good deal for that. That's the only reason I haven't seen them. But just that let you guys know that this does refer to just the theatrical release of the movie. So, with that being said, let's get right into it with my first bit of trivia, and I hope you guys enjoy. So for each one of these trivia facts, I'm going to tell you guys the chapter in the book that it occurs in and read a little section from that chapter for you just to let you guys know where I got this from. So this first fact here is from A Knife in the Dark, and this is when Strider and the hobbits are on Weathertop and they're trying to hide from the Nazgul. So we pick up here in the book and Merry says, "Can the riders see?" And then we pick up with Strider answering, "For the black horses can see, and the riders can use men and other creatures as spies, as we found at Bree. They themselves do not see the world of light as we do, but our shapes cast shadows in their minds, which only the noon sun destroys. And in the dark they perceive many signs and forms that are hidden from us. Then they are most to be feared." So I thought this was particularly interesting because it basically states that the Nazgul are blind during the day and they have to use their horses or other people or animals to basically spy for them so they can be guided through the world when it's light. But they are most dangerous at night. So I thought that was particularly interesting because, we do see the Nazgul kind of come up against the hobbits a little bit during the day in the film, but it's not actually until night when they make their first attack. That might not be, on purpose. I'm sure they would have attacked the hobbits if they'd come into contact with them at night. But it does draw a little bit more light onto why they had to be especially careful at night and why that's actually when Frodo is hurt. Which leads into my next bit of trivia. So let's get into that. So our second bit of trivia here comes from the chapter Many Meetings, which is the chapter when Gandalf and the party are talking with Elrond, and picks up right here when Frodo has just woken up after being stabbed by the Nazgul at Weathertop. And this is Gandalf speaking here, and he says, "To tell you the truth, I had very little hope, for I suspected that there was some fragment of the blade still in the closed wound, but it could not be found until last night. Then Elrond removed a splinter. It was deeply buried, and it was working inwards." And then after they talk about this, Frodo asks, "What would they have done to me?" asked Frodo. "What were the riders trying to do?" "They tried to pierce your heart with a Morgul knife, which remains in the wound. If they had succeeded you, you would have become like they are, only weaker and under their command. You would have become a wraith under the dominion of the Dark Lord, and he would have tormented you for trying to keep his ring, if any greater torment were possible than being robbed of it and seeing it on his hand." So this bit of information is especially cool because not only do we find out that Frodo actually bears a piece of the Morgul blade in his wound for days after the actual attack, we also see a little bit more insight as to what the Nazgul were trying to do when they stabbed him. It may appear that they were just trying to kill him, but it was kind of like a secret weapon where even if it didn't kill him, if Frodo hadn't received aid in time, he would have actually become like a ringwraith and under their command, which I think would be a pretty cool kind of little fan fiction or something like that if Frodo actually wasn't saved and he ended up becoming a ringwraith Ringwraith, and he turns against the party and serves Sauron. So I know that's pretty far out there, kind of, wouldn't really happen, pretty far-fetched, but it is pretty cool. If there's any kind of like fan fiction like that exists, let me know down in the comments and I'll check that out, because that would be a pretty cool twist on the story that we all know. So I thought that was pretty interesting, a little bit more insight as to what actually happens with Frodo, why he's acting kind of, dramatic in the movies. He is stabbed, so obviously he's in a great deal of pain, but it brings to light a little bit more of what he's going through when that actually happens. So let's move on to the next bit of trivia. So our third trivia fact comes again from the chapter Many Meetings, and this is Frodo speaking to Gandalf at first. It says, "Who made the flood?" asked Frodo. "Elrond commanded it," answered Gandalf. "The river of this valley is under his power, and it will rise in anger when he has great need to bar the ford. As soon as the captain of the Ringwraiths rode into the water, the flood was released. If I may say so, I added a few touches of my own. You may not have noticed, but some of the waves took the form of great white horses with shining white riders." So that's pretty interesting for me to see this in the book, because obviously in the movie we see Arwen cross that river and she's holding Frodo, and then she utters some words of power in Elvish and causes that flood to happen. But in the book we see that it's actually Elrond that causes this to happen, with a little bit of teamwork added in from Gandalf, which is pretty cool to see that this is actually the way it happened in the book. I know they changed it a little bit so that Arwen would have a little bit more to do in the actual film, but it is cool to see some of the power that Elrond and Gandalf have on display there. It's always cool to get a little bit more of a glimpse into what these, legendary and powerful characters can do. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see here. So this bit of trivia comes from the Council of Elrond chapter, and this is when Gandalf is explaining why he was late in meeting up with the hobbits. And this has to do with a character that showed up in the Hobbits movies but did not actually show up in the Lord of the Rings movies, but he is in the book, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm going to share that with you guys and read a little bit here. And this is again Gandalf talking to the council, and he says, "It was Radagast the Brown, who at one time dwelt at Rosgobel, near the borders of Mirkwood. He is one of my order, but I had not seen him for many a year. I have an urgent errand," he said. "My news is evil." Then he looked about him, as if the hedges might have ears. "Nazgul," he whispered, "the Nine are abroad again. They have crossed the river secretly and are moving westward. They have taken the guise of riders in black." So not only is this cool that we get to see a character that's kind of has a little part in the Hobbit movies, but it's also cool just to know that he did appear in the story. He does have a small role to play in the Fellowship of the Ring. He doesn't have a whole lot to do, so it makes sense that he wasn't actually in the movies. But it is cool to see, especially that he has such vital information, because this would have made a big difference to the party if he actually had given this information to Gandalf, and then Gandalf was able to transfer that to Frodo and the other hobbits. Because if they'd had this information at their disposal, their journey would have been a lot more safe and fast, because they would have been able to be on the lookout for those riders and kind of stay away from where they might be. So I thought that was cool that we get to see a little bit of Radagast, and also that he has such a vital part to play in the book. Our next bit of trivia comes again from the Council of Elrond chapter, and this is Gandalf speaking, still telling his story about why he was late in joining up with the hobbits, and he's gotten to the part where Saruman has stranded him on top of his tower, and it comes to the part where the eagles rescue him, and here's where the interesting part comes in, so I'm going to read that to you. "So it was that when summer waned, there came a night of moon, and Gwahir the Windlord, swiftest of the great eagles, came unlooked for to Orthanc, and he found me standing on the pinnacle. Then I spoke to him, and he bore me away, before Saruman was aware. I was far from Isengard, ere the wolves and orcs issued from the gate to pursue me. 'How far can you bear me?' I said to Gwahir. 'Many leagues,' said he, 'but not to the ends of the earth. I was sent to bear tidings, not burdens.'" So this is doubly interesting here, because we see that not only can Gandalf speak to these eagles, but they actually speak back to him. Now, whether or not that's, they can speak English or Gandalf can speak the language of these eagles, it's not said, but it is interesting to know that they can actually have conversations, and it's a little bit of, kind of an interesting trivia that these eagles actually speak, because in the movies it doesn't show anything about that, and so it's a little bit more of a cool backstory about them and a little bit more on the relationship that they have with Gandalf. This is also interesting because it kind of explains why the eagles are not able to carry the party to Mordor, because there is a limit to the distance that they can cover. They're, like Gua here says, they're here to bear tidings, not burdens. So they can swing in to have provide some help, but they're not there to basically just taxi everybody around Middle Earth. There is a concrete reason why they aren't able to take the party to Mordor, and that's because Sauron would see the eagles coming from miles away and basically just blow them out of the sky and kill everybody. But this kind of is a little bit more information about why they can't do that. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Our next bit of trivia comes again from the Council of Elrond. A lot of cool things happen in this chapter, and this is Elrond himself speaking about Tom Bombadil, a really interesting character that I referenced in my last video, and there's some more cool information about him in this section here, so I'm going to read that to you. I had forgotten Bombadil, if indeed this is still the same that walked the woods and hills long ago, and even then was older than the old. That was not then his name. Iorwen Benadar we called him, oldest and fatherless, but many another name he has since been given by other folk. Forn by the dwarves, Orald by northern men, and other names beside. He is a strange creature, but maybe I should have summoned him to our council. He would not have come, said Gandalf. Could we not have still sent messages to him and obtained his help? Asked Aristor. It seems that he has power even over the ring. No, I should not put it so, said Gandalf. He would not have come, not willingly. He might do so if all the free folk of the world begged him, and he would not understand the need. But if he were given the ring, he would soon forget it, or most likely throw it away. Such things have no hold on his mind. He would be a most unsafe guardian, and that alone is answer enough. So this is interesting. Again, we see a little bit more about Tom and the reason why he isn't summoned to the council. Despite his great power, he is still kind of bound by the area that he is in. He can't really go outside of it because, that's basically his domain and where he has all his power. And again, we see that it's really interesting what a stark contrast the ring and its effects have on Tom compared to everyone else in Middle-earth. It says that it's so meaningless to him that he would just throw it away, basically, because he would forget about it, whereas pretty much everyone else is driven to the point of insanity, and the ring is all they can think about. So it's really cool to see Tom. He's a very intriguing character, and, I understand why he wasn't in the movie. He doesn't really add anything to the story, but he is a very cool character and very intriguing. I would definitely like to see him show up at some point, hopefully maybe in the Amazon original Lord of the Rings series that's supposed to be coming out. So I hope that they address Tom a little bit in that. That'd be really cool to see. This fact actually comes from a chapter much further in the book than we have been so far. This is a journey in the dark while the group is going through the mines of Moria. And this has to do with the after effects of being stabbed, the Frodo experiences. So I'm going to read a little bit of this to you guys. Though he had been healed in Rivendell of the knife stroke, that grim wound had not been without effect. His senses were sharper and more aware of things that could not be seen. One sign of change that he soon had noticed was that he could see more in the dark than any of his companions, save perhaps Gandalf. So this is particularly cool to me because, we see Frodo get stabbed and experience going into the Wraith world a little bit, but it doesn't seem like he has any effect after that other than occasionally, he feels some pain from it when the Nazgul are around. But it is pretty cool that he did get somewhat of a benefit from that by being able to see in the dark. I've not read the other books, so whether or not that comes into play later on as something that he uses to his advantage, I'm not sure. But it is cool to see that he has somewhat of a cool ability after doing this, that he can kind of see in the dark. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I wanted to share that with you guys. But we're reaching the end of our list. I just have one more fact for you guys, so we're going to get into that right now. So our last fact here is coming from, again, a journey in the dark, and this is having to do with the mithril chain that Bilbo gives to Frodo after he leaves Rivendell. And it's, it's mentioned in the movie that it's an extremely good set of chainmail, and it's very beautiful. But we don't get into some of the cooler aspects of mithril, and I'm going to read that to you here. So, mithril, all folk desired it. It could be beaten like copper and polished like glass, and the dwarves could make of it a metal, light and yet harder than tempered steel. Its beauty was like to that of a common silver, but the beauty of mithril did not tarnish or grow dim. The elves dearly loved it, and among many uses they made of it, Ithudum, star moon, which you saw upon the doors. Bilbo had a corselet of mithril rings that Thorin gave him. I wonder what was become of it. Gathering dust still in Michael Delving Mathum house, I suppose. What? Cried Gimli, startled out of his silence. A corset of Moria silver? That was a kingly gift. Yes, said Gandalf. I never told him, but its worth was greater than the value of the whole Shire and everything in it. So we do see how valuable the mithril armor is to Frodo, where it saves his life, but we don't really see some of the more intriguing facts about it, other than, it's not just a metal, it can be used for many different things. We see that it's, I suppose it's inlaid on the door to the Mines of Moria that lets them in, so that was pretty cool. And also the fact that the chainmail itself is worth more than everything that is in the Shire is pretty awesome to see, because there's a lot of hobbits that live there, and hobbits like to stock up on treasure and everything, so there's probably quite a bit of things in there, but mithril is worth more than all of those things put together, so that's really awesome, and I thought that this was pretty interesting. Alright everybody, so that's going to do it for this video. I know it ran a little bit long, so if you did stick around for the whole thing, I really appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did. I really, really like Lord of the Rings, and I'm definitely going to do this again when I finish the other books, put together some more trivia and facts to go over in those. And if you found these interesting, please leave a like on the video and let me know what you liked the most about it. And also, just let me know if there's anything in particular about Lord of the Rings that you'd like me to explore further, because it'll probably be a little while before I get through the next books, so it may be a while before I actually put out the next video in this series. But if you do want me to talk about something in particular about Lord of the Rings, just let me know. And also just stick around on the channel for some more interesting videos. I do stuff not just on Lord of the Rings, but pretty much any cool nerd topic. So I hope that you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.